Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to another edition of Policing from a Black Perspective. And we have some very special guests with us today. We're excited to be able to have this conversation that we're having today. We have a group of police chiefs from historically black colleges and universities that are here in Atlanta for the Law Enforcement Executives and Administrator 25th Annual Training Conference. So we were able to pull some strings and get them in a room together so that we can discuss some very important issues that are facing law enforcement officials as well as historically black colleges and universities from a black perspective, policing from a black perspective. So I'm just going to ask them to introduce themselves to get us kicked off. If you could introduce yourselves, please.
Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. My name is Lee James. I'm a retired HBCU police chief, and I've been at Howard, spent 6 years at Howard. And then I went over to Johns Hopkins University, also worked at Prince George's Community College. Prior to that, I served with the Prince George's County Police Department for 27 years. So I currently work with the Consortium of Universities in Washington, D.C. I'm the training director for our training academy, and we have 8 universities within our consortium that go through our training.
Hello, Deborah Williams. I am the Associate Vice President and Chief of Police for Clark Atlanta University. I have over 40 years of law enforcement experience ranging from a municipality to K-12 to higher ed, where I am currently the Chief of Police and Associate Vice President with Clark Atlanta University. Thank you.
My name is Damon Williams. I am the current Chief of Police and Director of Public Safety at North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina. I'm the past president of the North Carolina Association of Chiefs of Police, and I serve as the current vice president of the HBCU LEEA. So I'm just glad to be here.
Hello, I'm glad to be here as well. My name is Jermaine Cherry, and I'm the Chief of Police at North Carolina A&T State University out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I have approximately 25 years of law enforcement experience ranging from municipal agencies to educational institutions of higher learning as well. Just so glad to be here to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you all for that great introduction. And folks, for those of you who are listening out there, there's no mistaking we got a lot of experience, a lot of stripes in the room today. So we're going to jump right into it. One of the things that I've always wondered, and I think it'd be a great place for us to start, is to just ask you all a general question that'll open up the gateway for some other questions in terms of what do you all see out of your experience as the number one issue that is facing law enforcement officials on historically black college and university campuses?
Probably trust. You have freshmen coming on, leaving home for the first time, coming from different areas, coming from other areas, probably where the relationship with the law enforcement community is not as great. And so they're coming into new surroundings with new peers. And so now you're asking them to come to unfamiliar territory and trust us. So probably trust.
And I think one of the things, even though I'm retired and not active, when I was there, and I know the other chiefs will attest to this, is the population of your campus turns over every year. You lose a quarter, for the standard university with a 4-year program, you lose a quarter of your population. So you have a whole new set of folks coming in to your campus every year. And so the issue of trust becomes, I think even that more important for you to continue to build trust. And for me, when I was at Howard in particular, I think for me, the biggest thing was really getting to know the students and the students getting to know who we are and why we're actually there, to protect the campus and protect their safety and things like that, as opposed to policing as we know it in municipal policing.
So I'll tack off what he said a little bit, I'll tack on too, but I'm gonna go in a different direction just a little bit. So trust, of course, is number one, right? But the only way we can build trust is if we maintain staffing levels. So retention of experienced staff and officers. And I say retention because ultimately you need that time to establish that trust. So if you have staff turning over constantly, you build trust and then this person is gone. You build trust and then this person is gone. So, on at Central's campus, our philosophy is building relationships, right? My main philosophy is it's hard to hate someone you have a relationship with. So you can only establish that relationship if they are there and put that time in and remain there, and you retain that officer to keep building upon the trust they've already established.
Absolutely, and if I can just kind of interject just a little bit, I would say access to appropriate funding. Funding for the initiatives and the infrastructure and the hardware we need, to also include the training that we need to be able to do our job effectively. Every year, like they said, like the gentleman, like everyone said here, we get a new batch of students coming in, with high hopes, high aspirations, and we have the awesome responsibility to make sure that they are secure, all right? So we can't do that alone. We work together as a team to do that, but we also would like to work even more closely with our federal and state partners in the area of funding and make sure that we are at the table and we're receiving the funds that are necessary to be able to do what we need to do to keep our campuses safe.
And
Go ahead.
and I think that's critically important what you just hit on, the issue of funding. And for me, we're here at this conference in Atlanta, and this is the 25th anniversary of this organization. This organization was started in 1999 by Chief A.J. White and several of the chiefs in this area. But it was really for us to come together to hone our skills and learn new tactics and strategies and things like that so that we can go back to our institutions and provide those services that we need. What I've seen over the years is the opportunity for us to engage the federal and state agencies to also give us, funding and training and things like that so that we can do a much better job. And that has to continue. It has to go to the next level, because I think that what I've seen over the years, that has really helped our institutions, because it helps us, it helps the people that we bring to these conferences to get those new skills and go back and help build that trust with our students.
And as you mentioned, the training that's being held today, we do have our federal partners participating in the training for that main reason that Chief Cherry spoke about, to help us obtain additional funding for our campuses in order to not only secure our campuses, but to get some of the technology that we need for our officers, for our personnel, in order to do their job and to do their jobs effectively.
Awesome. It seems that funding is a consistent issue across the board that I've heard just in my experience working with this podcast. What do you all see as the main barriers to the funding coming to you all to get the funding? What are the main barriers in your opinion?
One barrier I can talk about rather quickly is, recently with a few years ago we had those bomb threats. Remember, we had those bomb threats at many of the HBCUs around the country, right? And so what happened during that time, or in the midst of it, by the way, I think we handled it very, very well as an HBCU community, securing and making sure our campuses were safe. But in the aftermath and in the immediate aftermath, the federal government, different entities began to pour money into grants, and they began to stump and say, hey, we're giving this amount of money to HBCUs to help them during this time and those things. And so many of us, in our quest to obtain that funding, what we learned was that a lot of money was being dumped into already established grants. And we were not really getting access to it like we should have, because the rules of engagement that we had to use in order to obtain those grants were not changed. So the monies were being dumped into these spaces, but we were not having access to them like we should have. And so that's a main barrier right there. We have engaged our federal partners, DHS and others, to talk about those things, and hopefully, those monies will be made readily available to us, especially in our time of need.
Right. And also, not only that, you look at the you have with your higher ed, you have public state institution, and you have private. There's a difference, when it comes to funding. A lot of the private institutions, might not be eligible for some of that funding. So that creates a barrier as well.
I don't know that, I think I'm lucky being in North Carolina and at North Carolina Central and being a part of the UNC system that a lot of funding becomes available, right? But I listen to some of my colleagues at some of the smaller schools, and I don't know that some of the schools prioritize public safety. You say it, it's easy to say, but I don't know that they really prioritize it the way it needs to be. As I speak to my colleagues and as I visit their campus, it's almost like we're miles apart. And so that's the disfortunate part, that in some schools you get lip service about that public safety, but no support with that funding.
And that's why we can't be afraid to speak truth to power, because if we, even someone asked the question earlier, are we getting the support that we need to get, So, but when we have those issues, we can't be afraid to, because some of us report to president, some of us report to, like in your cases, I think you all report directly to your chancellor. And then like at my case, but you have some that don't even report directly to their president or their COO. So they're not really getting the true story or actually what is needed and what's required. So, that's why I think sometimes you see that difference with the support level, because you just have to be honest. This is what I need. At that point, they get an opportunity to really hear it from the end users. I mean, I can tell you all day, what's needed. I mean, you can hear it from someplace else. You can hear it from one of the educators, one of the professors. But are you going to take it serious? But if I tell you my truth, which is that this is some of the things that we actually need in order to mitigate the safety of our students and our campus,
It's those layers you're talking. That's a good point. There can be a lot of layers sometimes in some of these schools where talking to a chief here at the conference.
Exactly.
She has not spoken to her president. And I'm like, how long has he been there? Been a year. Yeah. And you haven't had communication directly with your president. Well, that definitely creates a problem. Because he doesn't have a true feel of what's going on from a law enforcement perspective.
Sure. I have a question that I'd like to ask you guys. We're coming up on the beginning of another school year. With the gun violence that's going on in communities all around America, specifically in African American communities, and the majority of African American HBCUs are in African American communities. What is one of the biggest challenges on securing your campuses with the prevalence of gun violence in your community and keeping your kids safe on their campus and getting the message to them that, hey, you have to be careful? What challenge do you have to communicate that to them?
So, let me chime in on that. So, it's all about that relationship again, right? And I think when they first come in, you have to establish with them where they're coming to and understand where they're coming from, right? You got to have those hard conversations. And I know for us in orientation, we make sure we instill it in parents. Listen, before they leave home, you need to have a serious conversation about where they're coming to, because they're no longer under your sphere of influence. And they need to be careful. I tell students all the time, be careful who you bring into your space, right? Be careful who you encounter when you get to Durham. The Raleigh-Durham area is 2.5 million people, right? So if you're coming from a small town America, you're coming into an area where you have no idea what you're about to encounter. Right. So you need to be prepared and understand and understand and focus, right? And we have to keep them focused.
Right.
It's hard. I'll go back to that again. It's hard to hate somebody you got a relationship with. That's both sides. It's hard for me as an officer to see this student and not want to help them if I have a relationship with them. And it's hard for them to see me in that uniform and hate me because we have a relationship.
And it goes back something you just said, that you can't be afraid to have that hard conversation with your parents. You can't sugarcoat the openness of our campuses. We're not, in all of our schools are not in gated communities, or our campuses are gated 100%. So they need to understand. I have a lot of parents and students asking me, what does it mean to say an open campus? That's exactly what it means, that your campus is not behind gates. It might be a portion, but again, when you leave out of that main campus, you're in the openness of the community. So there are some do's and don'ts that you don't need to do when you get in that community. But that's a hard conversation you have to have with your parents and your students, so they know exactly what to do and what not to do. Will they do it anyway? Yes, but the best thing we can do, like I said, make sure you build that relationship ahead of time so the information is carried forward.
And it's an ongoing conversation. I mean, and plus you've got to have relationships with your local law enforcement agencies, because you're going to have students who are going to venture off your campus. They're not under your span of control, and they're in different communities they may not be familiar with. But you've got to have those relationships with other law enforcement agencies to be able to help protect your students as well. So that's a key part to what we also do with campus policing.
And I think my next question to you all is, being police chiefs on college campuses, I know that you all have different reporting of crime statistics and things like that with the Clery Act. Could y'all explain to the community what your reporting is and things that you bring forward that you have to report that so that your department or the school doesn't get any hot water as far as funding?
Yeah. Well, let me start. I will say that in addition to Clery, and let me explain a little bit about the Clery Act. The Clery Act came about as a result, it's named after Jean Clery. Jean Clery was a student at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania that got killed in the late 80s. And her parents actually sued the school, and they launched a big investigation and whatever. And they found that the school was not reporting some of the crime that was going on the campus. Thus, the Clery Act came about. And the Clery Act holds us, institutions of higher education, responsible for the reporting of crime. In addition to the Part 1 crimes that we're required by our states and our jurisdictions to report, and it covers, murder, rape, robbery, theft, all those kinds of crimes that we have to not only report to our state governments, but also to the federal government. And when I was at Howard University, I was involved in a case where the federal government investigated Howard University under the Clery Act for some violations of the policies, because there are a number of reporting security policies that these chiefs are responsible for making sure that they follow. And so that is another critical part, I think, of our infrastructure on campuses, that parents need to know that we're being held to that standard as well. It's not only a local or a state law enforcement crime reporting system, there's also a federal requirement, and that's called the Clery Act.
And so, as a result, colleges and universities across the country produce what is called an annual security and fire report. It has to be produced every year by October 1st, and it's made readily available to everyone, to the entire country, to the entire community, so that we can share information with potential students and those who would want to come to our universities and matriculate and obtain an education. Now, it doesn't only have information in it that talks about crime and those things, but it talks about programming. Programming that is established by the university. It talks about how we would notify our community in the event that there's something happening either on campus or in the area of campus. How we do emergency notifications, timely warnings, and those types of things. And so it's a document. It's really a living document that can be accessed at all times. And we encourage all of our constituents, our students, faculty, staff, to visit our websites.
So that information would be on each school's website, or is there one database where we can go look up all the schools?
Actually, you can look at it if you go to the U.S. Department of Education's website. That report is available for all schools in America.
Yes.
All schools that receive federal funding, federal financial aid, are subject to the Clery Act, and that's available in the U.S. Department of Education website.
And also, not only are we required to report it, but we are also required to place our daily crime logs on our website. It has to be available. It has to be available, not only on our website, but if someone, want to see some additional information, guess what? We're required to show them our reports, show them the incidents as well.
Now, I'm gonna say this about Clery, because Clery can be a little confusing, okay? In North Carolina, the way we categorize crime under Clery and the way we categorize crime under North Carolina General Statute can be different. So it can be a little confusing and deceiving. So I always tell parents, if you have a question about something you see in the crime law, about how it's categorized, reach out to us and let's have that conversation, right? Because we keep an open dialogue. When we have student orientation at North Carolina Central, I give every parent my cell phone number. And I tell them that I'm your break glass in case of emergency kind of person, but I give you a lot of numbers to call, but if you have to, if you really want to get clarity on something, you can always call me and speak to me directly.
Right.
One of the
And-
questions that I had for you, for the panel is, and you just brought it up, the question is, how do y'all have a relationship with the parents? How important that is to have a relationship with the parents knowing that their children are coming to universities?
I mean, it's very important because again, these are their, these are their kids. We tell them, when they bring them to us, the expectation of, as I said, are you going to keep my daughter's son safe? So that conversation really starts there. They need to have that trust in you that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. I hear you say you're going to mitigate the risk. The next thing they ask, how are you going to do that? When they walk away, they need to feel comfortable that you're going to do something. When you, especially as he mentioned about telephone numbers. I mean, something as simple as giving a parent your telephone number, telling them if you have any concerns, any questions, not only a concern, but if you want to talk to me anytime. I am available. Not only am I available to my students, but guess what? I'm available to you as well. And when they know that, that you're there for them, guess that's where it starts. Because now, guess what? I at least could trust you until you show me otherwise, right?
I think the other piece to that is that, I put, and I've said this before, but we're all parents and we all have kids who at some point or another going to be attending college. And so to put yourself in a parent's shoes, what are your expectations for your child? I think is probably the way I went about it when I was working at Howard University. Really try to understand what a parent would be concerned about. Their child being, they're in California, but you're here in Washington, D.C. You want to know that your child is going to be safe. So really taking the parent perspective and really trying to understand what that's all about. Because, I have two sons, and both of them went to schools. One went to University of Maryland, one went to school in Baltimore. And I was concerned, going to school in Baltimore. The school was not far from, some of the tougher neighborhoods, but being reassured by the chief and by their staff that they're doing everything possible. I read the annual security report. I made sure I had all the numbers that I needed, to be able, and I think those are the kind of things, and you've heard it said here several times, making sure that you have that relationship with folk is critically important, I think, to put parents at ease.
And so we understand that students that come to our universities, they're a precious cargo. And we take that cargo very seriously. The goal is for them to leave the university better
Yes.
than how they came.
Yes.
And so in order for us to do that, we understand that we have to be professional as an agency, prepared, and proactive. We gotta be professional in everything we do,
Right.
and how we deliver our services, how we deliver our processes, because we understand that professionalism is the foundation on which everything we do stands. We have to be prepared. We know that we have to be prepared to face down whatever challenge that face our community. We got to be prepared, and we know that preparation is forged in training. So we get the latest and greatest training. We avail ourselves of that because we understand that we got to be prepared to do our job to the best of our ability. And finally, we have to be proactive. You see, we're not an occupying force coming into our communities to kick butt and take names.
Right.
We understand that we are made up of the fabric of our communities. And so therefore we look to be proactive, we look to engage our students, and we look for every opportunity to positively engage.
Right.
Because we know that they are, it's us.
They're gonna come to school.
So
They're
we
gonna
work
come.
together
Yes, definitely.
to keep the campus safe.
Now, I'm sorry.
And also, he mentioned, we understand that they're coming into education environment to get their education. But we also know they want to come in to get their HBCU experience, right? So we have to understand that, yes, you're gonna have, you're gonna have fun at the same time, but we want you to be safe.
Sure.
We want you to be safe. And that's why it's important for us to be proactive with how we respond to our students. Because we can't address the issue after the fact. We have to get in front of it. So that goes back to what we talked about, campus-oriented policing. You can't wait until something happens, and now we want to address it. We want to be proactive with everything we do, and that's with our relationships as well.
I think about something you just said. Because I tell my students all the time, if it comes down to your vibe and your safety, your vibe lose every time.
Exactly.
And
I say safety
you know, I say that all the time, and the kids get a kick out of it. But I'll say this, you know, I am a parent. My daughter's a senior, okay, and there are several schools on her list, and there are several schools I told her are no longer on her list, based on me reading their fire safety report. Because I need to know that wherever my daughter's going to go, that she's going to be safe. On my list of schools is my own alma mater, Fayetteville State University. I know the chief personally. I know what he does to keep her safe. Of course, that's on the list. North Carolina A&T. I know my colleague here. I know what he does to keep his students safe. And most importantly, I know how much he cares about his students. That's on the list. North Carolina Central University. God knows I know what a daddy does to keep the students safe. So, you know. So, but there are some schools that she talked about, and I said, you're definitely not going there. And I pointed out to her why, and I explained to her why. But let's go put eyes on it. And I said, you've been to Central, you see what we do to protect our students. Now let's go visit the school that you potentially want to go to. After we left there, even she didn't want to go there. So making sure that they understand and know what we have available for them, that's going to keep them safe.
I have a quick question that I want to ask. We're getting close to wrapping up, but one thing that I've realized being an HBCU grad and having spent quite a bit of time on campus and all that, I've learned that in many ways, the college campus is a microcosm in terms of crime, of the things that go on around the campus and the community. And one question I had, and this is along the lines of being proactive as well, and this is kind of for the parents, right? What kind of trends have you all seen rise over the past, let's say, decade or just in recent years in terms of different types of infractions that may happen? I know when I was in school, we had some situations with date rape. We had some situations with people doing drugs, you know, all of these types of things. And I just had to throw that question out there just to get parents that may listen to this to say, okay, I need to be proactive and talk to my daughter or my son about this before they hit campus. Because I came from a small town, came to Atlanta, ran into all kinds of stuff I didn't expect. You know what I mean? So can you all speak to that?
So, first thing I say is, I even tell parents, when I do orientation, I always ask students, how many of y'all smoke weed? You'd be surprised, they put their hands up. It's a socially accepted drug amongst their peer group. And I have to remind them that in North Carolina, weed is still illegal, right? So, so you can't do that here.
Right.
And so I always tell parents when I speak to a parent session, have a conversation with your child about marijuana, right? Because it's going to cost them everything if they come here and do it.
Right.
Have a conversation with them about alcohol, because once they get that liquid courage in them, they never make the right decision, right? And then have a conversation with them about sexual assault.
Right.
And I use that to catalyst them to be careful who you bring into your personal space. You know what I'm saying? Boys and girls, about having a conversation about consent. What does consent look like today?
Right.
It looks different than it did when we were in college, right? Have that hard conversation so that they are not sitting across from a judge who is not having that conversation for them.
Not only a judge, but sit there, because I tell them,
Awesome. Yeah.
exactly, I tell them all the time, you know, make those right decisions so you don't have to sit before me based upon the conversation you have at home with those same topics before you get to campus. And then when you get to campus, we're gonna have that conversation with you as well, because awareness is the key.
That's right.
You know, you do better when you know better.
Absolutely.
And if I can just add just a little bit to that, you know, our university, North Carolina A&T, we sit in an urban setting, right? And so one of the things I do annually is I make sure that I run our statistical analysis as to what's happening in the city, what is happening around us, and what is happening actually on the campus. And what I've found over the years is that the campus community, the campus environment is way more safer.
Exactly, way more safer, right.
safer than
You
what
get
is
that-
actually happening in the city.
Exactly, you find yourself explaining that to the parents
Right.
that, yes, I mean, yes, oh, well, they took, you know, their daughter or son out of school because they said it was safe. The community,
Right.
you know, it's not the campus,
Right,
it's the community, because as you said, we
Right.
sit in the heart of a community.
right. So why is that the case? That's the case because we have security infrastructure.
That's
We
right.
have security practices
That's right.
in place along with education
That's right.
of our students
Students,
and our community that drastically impacts campus safety.
And it's not just our students, it's our faculty and staff. we educate them as well, because we say safety is not just our responsibility.
Right.
And I say that's why I love that word, public safety, because it takes all of us in order to make sure we're safe.
So we have a safe community. Make no mistake about it. We have a safe community. Our community is just, our campus community is just as safe as any other campus around the country. You understand? But it's because we work together collectively as a team
As a team.
and as a family
That's right.
to ensure that our environments are safe. Because every student deserves the right to be able to go about their, campus community and be safe,
Education and be safe.
free from harm, so they can focus on their education.
These
And
schools.
that's what we do.
That's right. These schools are hollow grounds.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying? They are hollow grounds.
Yes.
I would not be here had it not been for Fayetteville State University. Had it not been for people who poured into me, even when I didn't recognize I needed to be poured into myself. So they're hollow grounds that could completely change your trajectory. I remember my high school teacher told my mother, she said, your son's gonna be a natural leader. What he's gonna lead, I just don't know yet. And so it took me to get to Fayetteville State and to get some people in front of me, sometimes kicking, sometimes saying, hey, look, boy, get it together, but stayed on me and kept that thumb on the pulse of what I was doing to steer me in the right direction. That's what these universities do for our students.
And also, as leaders, goes back to what Chief was talking about earlier. We can't look at this as just a job, something to do. We look at it as our calling.
It is.
Because it is our calling. Because we're not just showing up for work and getting to go home. And I tell my parents all the time, you get to sleep at night so I can stay up.
That's right.
Yes, you get to sleep at night so I can stay up. Because I want to make sure that you know that when you leave, you can rest at night, because I'm up. Or, worrying about, are y'all students, are they safe? Are they doing the right thing? What's happening on our campus? Are they bringing outsiders onto our campus that shouldn't be there? So that's my thing. I tell them, you get to sleep, so we get to stay up.
Awesome. On behalf of all of the HBCUs across the nation and on behalf of Policing from a Black Perspective, we just want to thank you all for lending your time and your knowledge and your insights to us today. And I just want to reserve the right to reach back out to you all later on for a possible virtual interview. A lot of stuff's going on around the nation, and you all's perspective is very important to be able to bring to the table.
Absolutely.
So with that, I just want to say we're going 10-7, and I got that right, Craig. We're going 10-7, and this has been another episode of Policing from a Black Perspective. Tune in to our YouTube channel at Policing FABP, also to our Facebook page, Policing FABP. And you'll see phone numbers there. You'll see emails if you have a question, you have a show idea, or you just want to reach out and chew on our ear for a little while. Reach out to us. We'll always be here. We'll be here for you. Thanks again for tuning in, and we're going 10-7. We'll see you next time.